Alright fellas, we're right back on Pokemon Masters, and tomorrow we're going to be getting the rerun for the Kanto Elite Four Variety Scout. Yippee! Wow, this is the content we all wanted, but dude, this month is so dead. I don't have any video ideas past, like, the next 2 days, so if anyone wants to leave any comments for something you may want to see me make, go for it. And I'm not summoning on the Scout. Just saying. I'm going to be looking at the sync pairs here. I'm going to try and go through them a little bit quicker while not trying to skip too many important details. But these Variety Scout sync pairs, other than Lance, are effectively what... It's an amazing blend between an average to low tier seasonal sync pair and a high tier spotlight sync pair. That's the best way I can describe these three supports. Because they all effectively do things that would be probably roughly equal to like a late 2021 sync pair to like early 2022. Like that era between Special Costume Jasmine and Suit Morty, I feel would have been like the perfect time slot for these characters to legitimately have dropped if they were going to do it and have them be valuable in quotes, right? I guess we'll start out with Bruno. He's the only one that I actually have of these three, because I got him off of the Mix Scout, and he's honestly pretty good. I want to preface this by saying these sync pairs by themselves are pretty strong, but you got to consider, for one, most of the good stuff is with dupes. For two, they are all on the same banner, so it's 0.5% pull rates for each of them, and obviously, there's the thing of being variety. If that affects you at all and you don't like Variety Scouts, then obviously that's going to be points off there, but that's always varying from person to person. Kit wise, clearly that doesn't matter. Either way, I guess we'll look at Bruno again, as I said. So Bruno's a support rock type with 6-star EX stats, 327 defense, 311 special defense, 750 health. These stats are pretty good. He does not get an EX roll with this update, which he'd just get tech anyway. They don't care. He would just get tech. Let's not fool ourselves. Or strike, one of the useless ones. 308 speed. His stats overall are not really that impressive, but they're still good. They're good stats. They'll be fine for bulk. Most of his good stuff obviously comes from the kit, as does fucking all units. He gets his training move, always getting stronger, which raises attack of all allies by 2, defense of all allies by 6, and physical moves next of all allies by 1, usable only one time. Minor offensive buffing ability, but very fast defense buffing ability with some physical moves next, just sprinkled in there. It's pretty strong, nothing crazy, but it's still pretty strong. Dire Hit All Plus, he's able to max ally crit, so now he's going a more offensive route with the physical moves next, plus to attack in this, and Screech, which lowers enemy defense by 2. So he's got himself that great physical bulk that is also able to empower physical allies with the defensive debuffing, crit buffing, attack buffing, and the +1 physical moves next. And then in the skills, he's got Endurance for extra tanking, Sterner Stuff 2 for even more physical bulk. This guy's actually going to be a really strong physical tank. And then Team Swift Reaction 9, raising speed of all allies by 1 when hit by an attacking move. Very, very good for, any team generally. This guy is, really good for the gauntlet. If you're going to do any duo, Bruno's going to be great for it. You got defensive debuffing, offensive buffing, you've got the Endurance, Sterner Stuff, and speed buffing for Gauge. He seems pretty good for that. But just looking at this kit, you're probably noticing it's not that crazy. You're right. It's not really that crazy. It's like Sonya level, but slightly better. Realistically, that's the biggest thing I can say about this. Actually, probably worse than Sonya because he doesn't have any method of healing like she does. But either way, that's pretty much what you can equate Bruno here to, is Sonya, with a lot of her abilities being similar. The only thing that she doesn't have is Sterner Stuff 2, which is negligible, Endurance, and I guess -2 defense, right? She's still able to max crit. She can actually max attack instead of only +2. She can max defense. She's got the same Team Swift reaction ability, right? They're very similar in that regard, right? And this is obviously disconsidering grids. So, at base, Bruno's fine. He's still got the defensive debuffing, which is good, the crit buffing, attack buffing, defense buffing, speed buffing, endurance, Sterner Stuff. They're all good abilities, but is it valuable compared to, most poke affairs that probably released at that time? No, not really, especially because you came after the release of things like Sigurdsson Aura Cynthia, Neo Champion Calum, Neo Champion Bede, right? Those were some of the better, more notable units of that era that released before Bruno, right? This is back when they didn't know what to do with varieties. They just released a paid unit that was basically Spotlight tier. And in the grid, I mean, we're not going to go over all of it. I mean, he's got Flag Bearer on the Rock Throw, which makes his attack buffing for allies look far more capable, but also consider this means that you can't use Screech, which is a little bit annoying. So you have to choose between buffing ally attack or debuffing enemy defense, which could be annoying. Unyielding 2 for a 30% chance to endure after endurance procs, could be clutch. Panic button for gauge acceleration. I don't think this is going to be too necessary because getting Bruno down to low health unless you're facing a special enemy is already going to be a little bit tough, considering all of his defensive bulk, physically, rather. And honestly, you don't need the gauge acceleration. He's got Team Swift Reaction, which is already a really good speed buffing ability. Plus, he has Team Speedy Entry 1 and Pep Rally on the Trainer move, so he's got even more speed abilities there. That works just fine. Trainer move Hit and Heal, applying gradual healing to all allies. This gives the team a little bit more consistent healing ability. Not as good as Sonya in terms of healing, but still not bad for sure. Electric Guard, I mean, that's probably good for Raikou, I guess. Are you weak to water? No, weak to grass. So there you go. You can face Raikou, I guess, with that. Sync Damage Guard for some, you know, ability to take Hyper Beams, Giga Impacts, whatever. Not that Giga Impact's going to hurt him anyway, again, with those defensive abilities he has. But I mean, hey, sure, he's got it. Charging Infliction 2, charging Gauge by 2 on Screech, just free gauge back on using Screech. And then, I guess, Team Mighty Sync 9 for the physical moves next when using his Support EX Sync move. Sure, I guess. I mean, all of these abilities, are they fine? Yeah, none of these abilities are directly bad, for sure. It's just that, mostly thinking about them, they're just about average, right? I mean, average to high-level spotlights or low-level seasonal units, like maybe that little difference between, I don't know, Palatine's Mallow and Sonya, right? That type of thing. When you look at this unit, you just really got to consider that these sync pairs can be good, can be strong for sure, but they're not a top tier support at all. But they are good, right? I mean, these abilities are not inherently bad, and I think I've conveyed that point enough. I have Bruno. I'm going to do a showcase over Bruno tomorrow. At least I'm going to try to anyway. And I mean, he looks good, but it's just he's not going to compare to things like Chase, Elaine, City Sorolla, Argenta, and none of these type of supports that are really, really strong. That you just really got to consider that when looking at a unit like Bruno. And that's going to be the case for both Agatha and Lorelai as well. So, I mean, Bruno's got good abilities. Defensive buff, debuffing, attack buffing, crit buffing, defense buffing, physical moves next on the trainer move and on the sync move. A lot of good gauge abilities with the speed buffing and the pep rally, the panic button for gauge acceleration. He's got good defensive abilities with sync damage guard and unyielding. Adrenaline 1 for some sync countdown, trainer move hit and heal for the healing for all allies. That makes his defensive profile a little bit better because obviously he was missing heals. That kind of helps it a little bit. Nothing crazy, but it does help out. So there you go. I guess we'll move on to Agatha. Why not? Agatha is a mixed buffer. She buffs attack, special attack, and crit by 2 on her trainer move, which is only 1 use. A little weird. I feel that is just not... This just makes it awkward, but I mean, it's still fine, I guess. Lear, so now instead of doing -2 defense debuffing like Bruno, she just does it by -1, but it's targeting all enemies. Wrap and Poison Sting for Poison and Trap. She has Team Underhanded Heal 4, 50% chance to restore ally HP when attacking an enemy affected by a status condition. Combine that with Hostile Environment 1 and you get yourself a 60% poison chance, and then this ability has a 50% chance to proc when attacking that poisoned enemy, or any status condition, but most likely poison. This is pretty much just Team Fist Bump, but with extra steps. Basically it. And then Full Bracing Pokemon move 9, defense and special defense go up by 1 when the user's Pokemon uses a move, which increases her overall bulk, which is nice. I'd say that in base, the only thing that she really lacks is immediate healing. Obviously she has this, but that's basically gradual healing, but slightly worse. Pretty much, actually entirely worse, right? So her healing ability is a little bit slow, plus her ability to buff defenses is also just equally as slow. So you really got to consider that Agatha may not be super have super great longevity, at least in modes that hit harder off the rip, right? You got to consider that, and of course these abilities to buff offenses are fine, but this is her only offensive buffing ability, and obviously Lear as well. But you got to consider this is only useful for allies who can already buff their stats, which that's fine. But generally, when you look for that's fine. for most modern characters, because most modern characters have good self-sufficiency. But when you're looking for a support, you're probably generally looking for them and how they can either influence the top meta sync pairs with abilities like weather terrain setting, physical moves next, super effective next, no, not super effective next, but physical moves next, special moves next, rebuff, zone, that type of thing, or how they can empower less stronger characters with similar abilities, right? Agatha just doing +2 in everything kind of hinders her ability to help out less capable partners, and obviously it is pretty much entirely useless for top tier partners, I guess. Anyway, other than that, in her grid, she's got Hostile Environment 2 and Poison Sting for guaranteed poison, because it's a 30% chance per Hostile Environment level, so 60% chance from Hostile Environment 1, and then another 60% chance from both of these Hostile Environments combined, for a total of 120% chance to poison. Obviously guaranteed. Team Sharp Entry 1, this maxes crit, makes her crit buffing ability look a little bit more potent. And speaking of potent, we've got Potent Toxin 2 for extra poison damage on the enemy. I don't think that's really that amazing because it's not toxic poison, so that just kind of exists. Leer Catalytic Infliction, applying gauge acceleration when using a status move each battle. It's just more gauge management, really. It's like a little bit worse than Bruno's, I would say. Terrify 1, lowering enemy attack. It does help out bulk for the team a little bit, but really I think you're only picking this up if you ever want to pick up Leer Catalytic Infliction, because there's no real other reason to pick it up in my opinion. And really even then I may pick up something like this instead, depending if I want to go for Leer Team Inflict and Heal 3. 40% chance to restore HP when the user's Pokemon uses the move is successful. It's Team Fist Bump, but effectively just for status moves, right? So anytime you use Leer, you get yourself a 40% chance to heal allies, similar to this ability, except it does not require poison, and it's not limited to just being Poison Sting, right? So, decent for sure, not too bad. Nothing crazy though, obviously. And then First Aid 4, status immunity. These are just generally good defensive abilities. First Aid 4, this does help out with her immediate healing, or lack thereof, immediate healing. So this does help out her bulk. And then status immunity is obviously really nice for being immune to those toxics. It's paralysis, just random paralysis, right? Like Registeel. The current Legendary Gauntlet's a great example of that, because we've obviously got stuff like Registeel with the fucking spam of Body Slam, Thunderbolt, whatever, and then the Toxic from Tornadus. So the status immunities will be helpful there. Mostly, again, in the Gauntlet scenario, not really so helpful in too many other battles. I guess maybe like, I don't know, Thornton with a random freeze or something. I doubt you're going to use her in any ultimate battles. That's just one of the bigger things about these guys as well, is that you're not really using them in any ultimate battles for efficiency purposes. It's mostly just for the fact that you can, I guess. She's got Berserk Bunch and ramped up on the training move, combined with training with NPR. If you want to fish for training with NPR, this means you can effectively max attack and crit in 2 turns, which is good, for sure. And then training with Hit and Heal, applying gradual healing to herself. So there you go, you get yourself that healing. Definitely helps out. Combined with the First Aid 4, the Inflict and Heal on Leer, and the Underhanded Heal 4 on her Trina move. So that definitely is nice for healing for herself and allies. And yeah, this is, again, Agatha and Bruno and whatnot, stuff like them. They're more like filler slotting characters that have abilities that are good for like filling up a team slot, but they're definitely not like optimal choices that players should be trying to go for. If you pick up the character, will you be able to make use of them, and will they be strong? Probably, but are they like the most effective option out there, or most worthwhile option out there? No, because to me, these are more glorified spotlights in terms of kits, just because of a real lack of uniqueness, mostly, because a lot of the stuff that these characters do can just be taken back to now Tierno, right, or Sonya, or someone like that. The kits are very similar in that regard. But again, that doesn't really, I'm not trying to undervalue these characters too much, because they can be strong. Her stats are pretty similar to Bruno's. HP is a little bit lower, speed's a little bit higher, but overall about the same stats for the most part. And definitely a fine kit. She's got more mixed offensive buffing abilities, focuses less on buffing ally defenses, because she doesn't at all. She buffs her own defenses a little bit slowly, but thankfully because of her healing ability she gets in the grid, it's going to be far more helpful for making sure she's actually able to stay alive long enough to be able to actually buff her defenses. And of course the poison's useful, and Trap is useful for different gimmicks and whatnot, depending on stages, right? Like Seabold this week with acute senses, or Cobalion with its status needing, Yuxi with the same thing, that type of stuff. It's helpful for that. And then Lorelai here in Cloister. Honestly, she's got a pretty solid kit, I would say. Her kit is definitely in the same like realm as these two, but I'd say that her kit's a little bit more, not unique, but a little bit nicer, I guess. Whatever. She's got extra tackle for buffing ally attack, and her training move, which raises allies' defense by 4 and crit by 2, applies endurance to all allies. The endurance on all allies is very nice. This is definitely a very, very solid ability just in any game mode, so having this is definitely very helpful. Defenses by 4 in 1 turn is very similar to Bruno's training move, except it's a little bit less, but also she trades stuff with Bruno, I guess. Instead of Bruno with his ability to buff attack by +2, she's got the ability to buff it by +4, but then she also only has the ability to buff crit by 2. Still, I mean, that's a pretty solid training move with all the effects that are just on the inside of it. It's kind of like Iona's, I think, because Iona's training move applies endurance to all allies and does some other things, right? Obviously, she's fucking far better, far more abilities, but stuff like that. Like, the endurance is nice, and the defensive buffs. Protect as well for damage guard, just simpler to get, honestly. Damage guard can be very useful for any support that does not want to take a high powered move, like going back to Registeel's Gig Impact and Hyper Beam, especially with its defensive debuffing. Being able to just negate all of that damage towards the end can be pretty vital, so more helpful in those gauntlet stages. Still can be very helpful in the stadium as well for taking high powered enemy attacks. It's just nice in general. I mean, there's not much else to say. Icicle Spear, 2-gauge move, it hits 5 times guaranteed because she does have no quarter, so 5 times landing on Icicle Spear, which then leads into Recharging Strike and Restoring Strike, which gives her a 30% chance to heal for every strike and a 50% chance to charge gauge for every strike. She removes like her ability to buff speed and gauge acceleration for the ability to charge gauge directly by using Icicle Spear. Is that better? No, not really, but I mean, it is a solid gauge management ability, especially in game modes like the Legendary Gauntlet. I'd say that's probably where we're going to get the most usage out of these guys is like the Legendary Gauntlet. So if you're looking for someone for like top tier stadium play or ultimate battles, extreme battles, stuff like that, this isn't, I'll tell you, these kits are not for you, except Lance. So yeah, I mean, base kit's fine. Buffing attack, buffing crit, buffing defense, applying endurance. I'd say the endurance is what makes her the most unique, is because that's a pretty strong ability that not many characters do. There's a lot of characters that do apply endurance and can apply it to all allies, but there's not a lot, especially compared to other abilities that these variety characters try to do. So that's definitely very nice. And of course, the hitting moves with Icicle Spear, whatever you want to call it, the hitting it maximum amount of times. The HP healing is going to be pretty consistent from that, as well as also being able to activate stuff like Neo Champion Serena's Buddy move, which requires 10 attacks and whatnot, so having the guaranteed 5 from Icicle Spear could be potentially useful if you maybe want to run her with that character. Is it optimal? Definitely not, but it's something, I guess. And other characters that may have a similar ability to that. In the grid, she's got Healthy Healing, Vigilance, Punishing Strike, Tripping Strike, Shielded, Fleet Feet, First Aid 4, Initial Synchro Healing, Team Mighty Sync, and Emergency Barrier. This isn't that relevant. And then I guess like Natural Remedy, these basic abilities. I mean, most kits come with stuff like Revenge Booster, Natural Remedy, those type of basic kit stuff. Punishing Strike and Tripping Strike 1, not 9. Are nice. They're 20% abilities to debuff defense and speed respectively, so that can be good for activating multipliers, and obviously debuffing defense is very helpful anyway. 20% chance trying to land it is not that great, but hitting it 5 times, it's definitely a more consistent chance. I would not really rely on it too much though, because again, it's really not that consistent, but I think stuff like this is what enables Lorelai to probably get a few solos in the gauntlet, because I'm pretty sure she can solo some stages, and these are probably why. The defense debuffs probably help out with her damage. Obviously she gets Restoring Strike and Recharging Strike, so gauge isn't that bad, and her healing's not that bad, that type of stuff. But I mean, this stuff's definitely not bad for longer battles. Shorter battles, it's going to be mostly inconsistent, so you gotta probably keep that in mind. Vigilance and Healthy Healing. Vigilance is if you want to maybe run something else like Adrenaline or Head Start 1, whatever it may be as a lucky skill, and then Healthy Healing just for that extra gradual healing, combined with Restoring Strike, can give her some pretty good healing every single turn, realistically speaking, right? Because you're going to be proccing this probably once or twice every time, on average, you use Icicle Spear, and then you get the Healthy Healing. You're healing up like 20% HP every time you use Icicle Spear, and that's pretty relevant, all things considered. And in the stats, by the way, Lorelai's got really good physical defense. Her HP is quite low and pretty meager average, not meager, pretty average special defense, I would say. Not bad stats overall. HP could afford to be a little bit higher, but I digress. She's got Team ID Sync 9, pretty much the same thing as Bruno. This is mostly just a filler node. I mean, it's not going to be that impactful, but you can pick it up. And then Initial Synchro Healing, this is probably where it's more impactful to pick up because you do probably want to maybe pick up Synchro Healing. Could be helpful for pretty much any battle for the healing there you get, and definitely nice in conjunction with her Restoring Strike and Healthy Healing here. So she's got a lot of healing, plus First Aid 4, which doesn't really need much explanation. And then Fleet Feet and Shielded on the X attack gives more defensive prowess and speed prowess as well, right? So now it actually gives her the ability to buff speed, which is better than Recharging Strike, but also in conjunction with Recharging Strike, you get just more gauge in general. So that's definitely nice for sure to have. X attack all NPR enabling these abilities as well. Even better is very nice for sure. So again, grid mostly stuff that is already building on top of what she already has. That's generally how grids work in general. Generally how grids work in general. Yep, that's a sentence. But yeah, definitely not too shabby overall. I would say that Lorelai is probably the most differentiating of the bunch, but still a lot of her abilities are not that crazy because again, it's basically stuff we already have. A little bit of healing, some crit buffs, some defense buffs, some attack buffs, some special attack buffs. Not in Lorelai's case, but Agatha's case, right? Most of these abilities are things that other supports can do, just that Lorelai does them a little bit differently, or does them in a slightly more effective manner, or on top of other things, right? That's how these characters kind of make their differentiating among themselves by having these old abilities, but combining them in new-ish ways, I guess, but still not being worthwhile in the same time. Still, again, none of these kits are inherently bad. It's just that they are definitely not valuable to pick up, especially, again, with a lot of other supports. And now we'll move on to Lance, the one that's actually the most valuable of the bunch. Mostly for the fact that he's able to actually set Dragon Rebuff, but we'll go into that in a bit. Looking at the stats, his special attack is quite low, but he does try and make up for it with his other abilities. Does he actually make up for it? I don't know. I haven't really looked at too much stuff on Variety Lance, but I know it does. He is definitely one of the more valuable ones just because of how the different things he's able to do. Stats overall are fine for attack, I guess. Special attack could afford to be higher, but what are you going to do? Speed's fine. Pretty basic stuff. Defenses, yada yada. He's got Dire Hit All Plus, so he's able to buff ally crit on top of his own. Just as a tech character, definitely useful for some random characters who may want to have a crit support. Like, for example, Suit Serena. Obviously, you want to use her trainer move. You want to use her Dire Hit Pluses for maxing crit, but you also want to use her 1,000 Waves for powering up her first sync move. Obviously, there's a problem there because that's 4 turns. You have 3 turns to sync, assuming you don't do any sync ramping. So Lance is able to fix that by buffing her crit for her, which is nice. So that's just one example that the crit buffing is helpful. It's probably helpful in other ways as well. Thunder Wave for paralysis, less helpful, it's more niche. I mean, obviously it's good for Tornadus, Cobalion, Uxie, those legendary arenas and whatnot. Again, acute senses enemies as well, or whatever it is. Whatever the ability is that enemies need to have a status condition to actually take damage, that type of thing. But it is definitely helpful for Suit Cynthia, because she obviously does want paralysis, right? For her stuff like Static Shock. I think she has a DPS version. I forget what the DPS version is of Static Shock. Where the hell is she? There she is. But yeah, she does have Static Shock here. And paralysis synergy, that's what it is, right? So Lance being a pretty good partner for her in that aspect. I'd say he's probably one of the better partners for her in being able to actually power her up. And then he's also got Hyper Beam, right? Generic Lance tradition, having Hyper Beam, 4-gauge move to 45 base power, definitely really strong. Heart of Justice, reducing sync countdown by 1, raising special attack by 4, speed of all allies by 2, accuracy by 1, and taking damage equal to 20% of its remaining HP. I mean, taking HP is not great, but it's only 80%. Definitely a far cry from Lance's base kit, where he takes 50% remaining HP. Granted, he does now have the abilities to mitigate that, but still, or make it worthwhile, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, either way, it's good for self-sufficiency. The speed buffs is definitely very nice as well. Accuracy buffs for the team could be pretty helpful too. It just helps that with gauge management, self-sufficiency, sync ramping. All this stuff condensed into one move could be helpful depending on what you want to do. And of course, it's useful for Lance's ability to buff his offense. Duh. And in his base kit, he's got Dragon Shift, obviously, Hyper Beam's Dragon type. Shocked hit free before. This is what helps gauge management even more. Obviously, he does buff speed, but that's probably not enough to consolidate using a 4-gauge move over and over. So getting free moves next off of it is going to be useful there. 50% chance. And then Afflict Dragon TR type rebuff. Yeah, Dragon type rebuff down. Lowering target Dragon rebuff by 1 the first time the user's Pokemon uses a status move targeting the opponent each battle. Effect can only activate once per battle. I don't know if this makes it seem like the only whichever enemy you target is able to be affected by the Dragon rebuff, but I don't know if that means per enemy or just once in general. Either way, I mean, it's not really that big of a difference. The sizes generally don't matter too much. You'll be able to do enough spread damage anyway. But either way, I mean, obviously use it on the middle, and then you can figure out if it works on the sides from there. I don't remember, and I'm not going to cut the video to look up and confirm for the fact, because it really does not matter that much. But I mean, either way, 30% Dragon type buff, whatever. Rebuff is a 30% power buff to Dragon type moves on that enemy, so that's definitely a really good ability to help him do more damage, and obviously, for the biggest part, supporting allies like Signasuit Serena, Signasuit Cynthia, Lucas, whoever you're running him with, they're going to be getting a good boost from it. As long as they're Dragon type or using Dragon type moves. But that's pretty much his base kit. The innate multiplier is Paralysis, which is fine. That's not that amazing. I mean, Tech EX with 380 as a total. Well, Tech EX 330, 1 out of 5 300 base power Tech Sync move with a 50% multiplier here. Not that fantastic, but I mean, it'll probably be fine. It's just a generic Tech Nuke, man. It's not gonna be that crazy. I would say at 1 out of 5 Lance is fine. I mean, he's going to be doing Hyper Beam DPS. He's got the supportive ability and self-sufficiency. He's got the free moves next. He's got the Dragon rebuff as his biggest ability. If you're just going to slot him on a team at 1 out of 5, I mean, he's going to be doing his job for the most part. Mostly, when investing dupes, you're going to be probably going for his nuke, because at 3 out of 5 you get Static Shock, Paralysis Synergy, go viral on Thunder Wave, Brain Power, Brain Gain, both sync nodes of course, trying to move Ramp Up for stage 4, why Atmospheric Acceleration, whatever. Weather Conditions? Why weather? Who the fuck? What are you running in with Zinnia? Sure. Okay. Or New Year's Lance, I guess? Sure, man. Shed Skin? Is that what that's about? I don't know. And then Quick Tempo. That's not really that relevant. Anyway. These are probably his most important nodes. I don't think the accuracy nodes are that important because he already buffs accuracy. So I don't think these are that needed. But I mean, if you want to guarantee it, plus guarantee it even more, there you go. But these are probably his biggest things. First Aid 4 is good for healing. I mean, he takes 20% HP. So I guess if you're that scared, you can pick up this, though probably wouldn't. Trying to move Ramp Up, maxing out his special attack is good for activating Brain Power all the way, and it's also pretty solid just for getting max special attack in general. Though I probably would just bring a support to do that role, so probably don't sacrifice anything for that. He does get Brain Gain, Brain Power, and the Sync nodes, of course, so Brain Power on top of Static Shock 5 gives you a total of 200% multipliers when combined with the innate Static Shock. That's definitely going to make his nuke look a lot more respectable, even despite his lower offensive stats, because even at 150, that's kind of iffy. If this guy were to ever get an EX roll, I would probably hope that it's Field or Strike. If it gets Strike, then that's buffing his offenses a lot more, and if he gets Field, obviously that gives him both capabilities of setting rebuff and zone, which is going to be really nice for sure. So let's hope for that, Lance fans. Anyway, man, that sucks. Okay, whatever. Anyway, yeah, so on top of that, he does get Process Energy 3 and Brain Gain 2, which is a 30% chance to increase special moves next when the move is successful. So Hyper Beam is going to have that probably 30% chance in general to have +1 special moves next applied to it. So it'll be getting that power buff. On top of Paralysis Energy 3 here, that is going to be a 30% multiplier if you do manage to pick it up. And that's definitely not bad, for sure. So he can look pretty decent with his Hyper Beam DPS, and his nuke is also relatively respectable at the same time. And on top of that, again, he's got himself the Dragon rebuff, which is an ability still unique to him, besides Special Costume Steven with super effective enemies, right? Dragon rebuff, I think, is still unique to him. I don't think Leon sets it. I could be wrong. I don't remember this guy's kid that much, and politely, I ain't reading all that. Right? So yeah. Either way, I mean, I'd say Lance is probably, at the very least, If you want to make an argument about him still being just as relevant as the others, I would say at the very least he's got the most unique kit and the most unique capabilities, because he's actually got, he's for one not a support, for two he's got Dragon Rebuff, and really what else do you need to make yourself a little bit more differentiated, considering Dragon Rebuff still does not have any other setter, because I'm quite certain Claire does not do it either. I think she would be a little bit more talked about if she did. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it. I mean, I wouldn't recommend summoning on this banner. It's not really worthwhile. 3 of the characters are... Okay, all of them are good. All of the characters are good, but 3 of them specifically are very borderlining being, like, spotlight material. Like, they are literally, like, one stage off of being spotlights. Like, if I were to put a tier between them, I would put spotlight characters, these variety scouts, modern seasonal sync pairs. Or maybe you could put them above seasonal sync pairs, at least relative to when they released, because I would honestly say that there's a good chance they could be considered better than those of, like, Palatine's Mallow or something, but whatever. I mean, they're still good. They're all good characters, just they really lack value, just for the fact that they're limited, and they're also on a horrible banner type, and, like, it's just that they are so comparable to Spotlight, so the fact that you're comparable to a Spotlight says a lot about your kit. I've said that ad nauseum, though. And Lance, even despite Lance's abilities and how solid he can be, I would still say Lance is on a lower tier of strength compared to a lot of characters. I mean, he's definitely good. He's definitely got his own niche, at the very least, and he's definitely going to be a respectable addition to any, like, Dragon-type team we may put him on. But just looking at what he's all able to do, he's kind of set back a lot, especially related to, like, other sync pairs. It's just in my opinion anyway, though, or at least a lot of other rebuff setters that have came out around his time of release and probably since then. He's better than Alistair, probably. Maybe. I don't know. No idea. But whatever. That's my thoughts on this Variety Scout. If you got any comments or whatever, let me know, I guess. I would say that all of these sync pairs are fine. If you want to summon, I guess, because you like Kanto, go for it. They're going to be fine additions to your team. But the banner format is really bad. And that's really the biggest thing about these kits, or about these characters, is that banner format combined with their overall kits is like, you can't justify summoning on the banner due to kits, because the kits themselves are not uber top tier enough to justify the pull rates for them. But that's just my opinion. So good luck if you're summoning. I'm sorry for you.